it's a bit cliche, but you think of peak performance.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I, both online and offline, we've had multiple conversations in our relationship and in our past about the uniqueness and the difference between optimal performance, which is what your book is all about, what you are all about, versus peak performance. So to bring our Playmaker audience in, because we're all about leveling up, we're all about maximizing our potential. So if we think about that and we say, I strive for peak performance, but you as Rich might challenge that notion and say, maybe you want to rethink that. Maybe it's optimal performance. Talk us through the difference of peak versus optimal and how we can all apply what you consider the winning strategy and tactics into our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, and it's funny because you and I have had these conversations. It's an epiphany I came to a little bit while I was still in the Navy, but mostly when I got out of the Navy, and I was talking about high performing teams, and people were starting to ask me a lot of questions about peak performance. And the going in assumption in terms of and why they were asking me was that SEALs are some of the ultimate peak performers. And so what we have to understand is what peak performance actually is. And I would say what peak performance is as defined by most of us, okay, and most of what goes on in at least society, that we experience, and that is peak is an apex, right? It's the best. Right. It's the very best. It's the top. It's the epitome, right? And the apex is you can only come down from an apex, right? So so there's nothing wrong with peak, okay? Because if you can achieve peak, that's great. But most of the time, I would offer almost all the time, peak has to be planned for. It has to be scheduled. It has to be mapped out, right? So the professional football player spends his entire week, planning and preparing and doing things that week, so that he may peak for 3 hours on Sunday, right? That's what happens, right? You could
100%.
You could do the same thing in business. You and I might, when we're teaching together, we might we prepare ourselves so that for the 2 days we're teaching, we're kind of peaking. If you can, in fact, peak for 2 days, which is tough, but that's what it is, and it has to be scheduled. So I would say oftentimes that I didn't think SEALs were peak performers as much as they were optimal performers. Optimal performance is something different. Optimal performance is the ability to do the very best you can in the moment with whatever you got and whatever the best is defined as in that moment.